Hello, welcome to Oxford's History Today. I'm your host, Ron Brock. And for the last couple of weeks, we've talked about the history of our museum, and we've explored the lower level to see what artifacts are contained downstairs. And I thought it might be kind of interesting to take a look at Oxford's two big claims to fame, one being the gravel industry and the other being the Lone Ranger. And I thought this week, let's take a real good look at the gravel industry and see how that all developed. We have a guest today, Mr. Duane Salswedel, who's been involved with the gravel industry all of his life.
Good afternoon, Ron.
Hi, Duane. Glad to have you. Come on in
doing?
and sit down, and we're going to talk a little bit about the gravel industry.
Oh, good. I've been in it all my life.
Great, great. I understand you were with American Aggregates for quite a while.
I was with American Ag for 42 years.
Oh my, that's quite a time.
And
could you explain to us a little bit about the history of the gravel industry in
yes,
Oxford?
I can. And by the way, I served American Aggregates for 42 years, but my dad also served American Aggregates, so I was kind of following in his footsteps. But the industry has been around since about 1910 or 1911, and it was first in operation through a gentleman by the name of W.O. Smith. Mm-hmm. And that's when he started, probably in that time, in that era. And then we my dad started with it in 1928, and we sort of been a part of my life ever since then.
Oh wow, that's great. The American Aggregates, when they were really in their heyday, about how many people did you employ here in Oxford?
Well, I would say anywhere from 120 to 150.
Wow, that's quite a few people. Yes. For the town of this size. So it was quite a big impact on the economy of this town, wasn't it?
Yes, and we were a real part of the community, because there was not only American Aggregates where we were, mm-hmm. And so, like I say, my dad was with them since 1928, and they go back before that time.
Oh, wow.
And then, like I explained earlier, W.O. Smith was back to 1910 or 1911. Mm-hmm. So that the gravel industry has been a part of Oxford for quite a long time.
Yeah, it sure has. When you were really producing, about how many train car loads of gravel were shipped out a day? Do you know?
Oh, I'd say anywhere from 100 to 150.
Wow.
Car loads, both sand and stone.
Both sand and stone, okay.
Yes.
Did you process the gravel at that time, or did you just ship it out the way it was mined?
No, we've been, ever since I can remember, and even in W.O. Smith's time, it was processed in some way. It was not just taken out of the ground and delivered to a customer.
Oh, okay. So you were operating stone crushers at that time?
We were operating the crushers. We were washing the stone, and in the late or early 60s, we began a operation where we done heavy media processing, which meant it went through a heavy media material, mm-hmm. that took out some of the bad stones, or more than the bad stones that we could take out by just washing.
Okay. Yeah, I know here at the museum we've got some examples of the different gradations of stone that were produced, and we can show the audience here some of the jars that we have, and basically what this different gradations of stones were used for a little bit later on. Okay. When did operations really start to slow down, as it will, for American Eggs?
Well, I think basically it slowed down the farther north in the operation we went, up around Dunlap Road, and mm-hmm. and we're, by the way, they're still operating off of Ray Road, so
that's right.
Still, mm-hmm. It hasn't been done away with completely yet.
Completely, yeah. I know the big center you guys had with the silos and the conveyor belts and everything is now Meyer and Boulder Point Golf Course, which is really something to see now. I know they use a tunnel now for the golf carts that you used to use for a conveyor to get the stone over to the railroad tracks.
It was wise use of that tunnel.
It sure is.
You know, it was either use it for a tunnel for something or do away with it, fill it in. But,
yeah.
But very nice to see that that kind of thing was able to take place.
Yeah.
But it is a far cry from what we had at one time with the conveyor coming under and both a dragline operation and a dredge operation over on that side of the road. Because we started out, we only had the dragline. We only went down as far as water.
Okay.
And we didn't do the dredging part of it until probably early 60s.
In the early 60s you started with the dredge.
Yeah.
And was it all on the west side of 24 that the dredge operated, or did it move around?
Yes, no, it was all on the west side. We got it for that operation, and the dragline operation would take it down to water level, and then the dredging would take it about 90 feet below the water.
Okay, okay. So in that time period, did you have to pump some of the water out, or was the dredge able to operate with the water there?
The dredge operated, and all we brought in from the dredge was the stone.
Okay.
The sand was placed in areas such as where Sea Ray used to be, and now is another kind of industry there. But that was the process. The sand was pumped from that dredging operation and filled into areas that we had already mined, and then came a rehabilitation type of area to work with. So we have, you know, the development all over on that side of residential and I'm trying to think of the
where Waterstone is.
Yeah, all of Waterstone, and where the community that takes care of people.
Oh yeah, that's Independence Village.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and so very nice development back there. That
beautiful.
That my dad, if he saw it, would be very proud of. He never got to see any of it, but I can remember meeting up on the hill and back of the cemetery with him, and envisioning what would go in where we were mining. So,
when you were finished mining in an area, did you actually do the rehabilitating of the area, like put in trees, plant grass, and that kind of thing, or was it just kind of left for the developers to do?
No, we planted grass in a lot of the area. We didn't do much with trees. Mm-hmm. We done a little more with the water, like planting trout and stuff like that. So, but we weren't too much on trees.
Okay, I was just curious on how the land was put back to use once you were finished with it.
We were very popular and positive about land reclamation. Mm-hmm. We knew of operations where they just went away and left it.
Yeah.
And excuse me. Mm-hmm. But pretty much we were a leader in land reclamation in both Michigan and Ohio.
When you first went into an area to start extracting the gravel, when you first started digging, did you come across any kind of artifacts at all? Being a museum here, we're kind of interested in artifacts.
No, I imagine we did come across some, but we were not much on arrowheads or anything like that. So they just went up to the plant and become a part of the process. But I'm sure some arrowheads and stuff like that were processed right along with it.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious on what was found, and with my own background in construction, I know when we first moved into an area, we were always excited when we first started breaking ground, because you never knew what you were going to come up with.
And we, as far as the sand and gravel is concerned, we pretty much knew what was there, because we had tested those areas, and we pretty much knew what we had below water and what we had above water. Usually we had 30 to 32 feet above water, and then after that it was a dredging operation.
Okay, well, good. Then maybe we'll go into a little bit about what's happened since American Aggregate was there. Duane, we brought down the picture here of a good view of the American Aggregates operation. And if you would, maybe you could take us through the sequence of how this thing operated.
Okay.
I know we talked before, we said that we had a dredge and a drag line and everything working over here. And by the way, this is 24 right here. Not quite what it looks like today, but that was 24. And I know you were operating over on this side.
Yeah.
So if you will, just kind of explain the operation to us from
sure
getting
will.
it out of the ground and getting on the railroad car.
Okay. We talked earlier about the dredging and the mining on the west side of M24, which just shows the beginning of that operation. And both the dredge and the drag line would operate on this side of M24. This shows the enormous extent of the plant. It also shows the enormous extent of the number of railroad cars that were loaded, some every day and some through the week. But the main thing I think this also shows is this area south of the plant where we stockpiled for winter.
Okay.
Here we would put up piles of the different gravels for not only asphalt paving but for the making of cement. And this was the storage area for the sand and the gravel. This was the plant, and the back part being that heavy medium plant that I explained earlier and where we processed that. Now, if you went over to this area today, this would all be filled in because it was filled in. We only kept the stone, and the sand was quite often just washed out in this area, and it became an area that now today is the high school and Myers and some of the other things. But I think the main thing that this points out is that we had this area prepared and available for winter storage.
I see.
And this also shows the mast area that we filled in with sand that we didn't use out of the plant. Now we did use some of the sand, and quite a lot of it more, but it was all going to be piled up in this area here, away from where the silos were. Yeah, this picture don't show it, but earlier there would be, or later there would be a conveyor that run out here, and we piled large amounts of sand out this way.
Okay, so then as, let's say as the dredge and the drag line dug the raw material out of the ground, if you will, it would have been put on a conveyor belt and brought over here. Now, is this just a transfer building, or did some operation take place here?
No, that is a transfer building, but
Okay.
it probably also had a large crusher in it to take the bigger stones and get them down smaller to go into the plant.
Okay, so the bigger, like boulder type
Yeah,
things, that
yeah.
would crush it down, so
Yeah.
then it would go through this conveyor,
Yeah.
and this must just be like another transfer building here.
Another, yeah. This is the storage area.
Okay.
And then it went across and up to the plant.
So this would carry, this conveyor would carry the stone and stuff
Yes.
up to the plant?
Yeah.
Okay, once it got to the plant, what happened to it then?
Well, this was the main area of crushing.
Okay,
Any stones that need to be crushed were there. This was the area of separation of the stone. The stone had been washed by that time and would be separated into different sizes, again with more crushing in this building so that we would
Okay.
get the stone down to a size that we could use. But here is where all the washing and separation would take place, is in this area right in here.
So
And then there were bins underneath the plant,
okay,
and a tunnel underneath this whole area, and it would eventually be tunneled out to this area.
okay.
You can see all the different areas where, but that mainly was the process. These were, this was evidently an area of what we called pea gravel.
Okay, yeah.
Pea gravel was quite often an excess because there was more of it than what we could use. We got to a point where we were crushing it in this area, but that was later on. And the wash, the water that washed all the materials was just went out here and back and filled in areas that needed to be filled in.
Okay.
So
okay. So then, as you came out of this building, you must have had the material go across different screens.
Oh yes,
and
definitely.
the size of the screening would allow certain stones to drop through it.
Yep.
And that's kind of the way you graded it, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
This was the crushed stone area. This was the operation that separated the sand and the stone.
Okay.
So, and then underneath were the different bins with the different sized stones, and eventually there was a tunnel underneath the whole thing, and eventually it would end up in these silos.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there was actually tunnels that went, again, underneath the railroad tracks here and everything, and came back to this area.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. That's great.
I think the amazing thing about this picture was the number of cars we loaded.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know, this is 1953, so it was fairly late in the operation, really.
Yeah.
But that finally kind of disappeared, the gravel and trains, because trucks took over because they could get to these ready-mix plants where
a lot easier.
all the ready-mix plants didn't have a railroad siding.
Siding,
So
sure.
trucks kind of took the place of the railroad cars.
Yeah, and just to give our viewers a little idea of the size of this thing, and just stop and think about this. This looks like a gravel train here, like we know them today.
Yeah.
You know, and this looks mighty small compared to these silos and everything.
Yeah.
The dredge that you had, Duane, I'm kind of interested in that. It's was it a wheel type dredge, or did it have a big bucket?
It was a suction type dredge.
Suction dredge.
The ladder went down and it sucked the sand and gravel up, and we separated the sand off, and the gravel went on a conveyor and eventually ended up here.
Okay, so it operated like a big vacuum cleaner then, is basically what it did.
Well, that's, the dredge.
All right, okay,
Yep.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and up to 90 foot down.
Wow, that's
So
quite a
it
ways.
was some pretty deep water back there, and everybody come in for fishing passes.
Oh, I'll bet. I'll bet. Yeah, that's an interesting part of that. I didn't realize the dredge operated that way. I'll bet you guys had some pretty big fuel bills, didn't you?
Oh yeah. we used to go shopping if fuel oil was over 10 cents.
10 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Entirely different world.
Oh, boy, isn't
Where
it?
now fuel oil's higher than gas.
When this was operating, did it operate on a 8-hour schedule, or did it operate 24 hours a day, or?
There were times when we operated 24 hours a day.
Wow,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and quite often during the summer, 24 hours a day.
So you'd have to set up temporary lights, would you then? And
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's really interesting, Duane. I never realized that you operated with the dredge so much over here, and that there were tunnels underneath here.
Yeah.
Did they just get filled in, do you know, or are they still there?
They're, I would think they're gone now.
They're pretty much filled in, figure? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Duane, for that little bit of history, and when we come back, we'll look at a few more things.
Hi everyone, don't forget you can purchase DVDs of your favorite shows from OCTV, whether it's Minutes by Minute, Our Community Access, or Connie's Kitchen. Just call the station. Our number is 248-628-9658. And enjoy watching all of our shows on OCTV.
Well, Duane, here we have some photos of the very, very early days of the gravel industry here. And if you would just kind of take us through what these machines are. They're kind of funny looking. And we've also got some horses here in the picture, so they must have been used in the very early days where we use trucks and engines today. So I'll let you kind of explain these pictures, Duane.
Well, Ward Sand and Gravel was way before my time.
Oh, I know.
So when I, as far as I know, they were a dredging operation.
Okay.
And they did dredge. They There's some of the barges are still at the bottom of Oxford Lake, but they were strictly an operation where they got the stone and kind of more or less wasted the sand.
Okay.
More or less similar very much to what American Aggregate did with a lot of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, they were quite a bit before my time. When I got around to knowing that they had a gravel pit over there, which was, you know, in my early teens, well, that's all it was, is just a lake.
Okay.
But they did mine to the extent that they left a 115-acre lake,
Mm-hmm.
and we know it as Oxford Lakes today. And to the extent of that, I really don't know a lot about their operation.
It's kind of interesting as we look at these pictures. It might be kind of hard to see, but you've got a horse pulling a car here.
Yeah.
Here's some horses back in this photo of some of the people that worked in the early pits.
Mm-hmm.
Over here, we got a steam engine, steam locomotive to pull the train, which I don't know that I saw anything like that even as I was a child. So it's got to be a ways back, and this looks like it's in 1893. So
that was the power. In
that was
day.
quite a ways back.
Steam, yes.
Steam, yep.
Yep.
And as you had talked about the lake and the way they worked, here you can see the big lake that they created.
Yep.
And where they were dredging the gravel out.
Yep.
That's quite a ways to do it. I'll bet you there was a lot of manpower involved in that.
Yeah, well, when you start to see horses used, you know that, you know that there wasn't the diesel engines at that time, and
the electricity,
the electricity that we used lots of.
That had to have been a lot of very hard work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to your days, and I know you can speak more on that. We've got a couple different photographs here. Maybe we can go through and explain what the equipment is that they're using.
Okay, well, this started out on early on because these pictures probably go back to the 1930s, but in these two are my dad and some of the other people that worked for American Aggregates.
Okay, yeah, that's 1931 I see on a date there.
Yeah, that was when I was born.
All right.
So, but mainly what we're showing is different hoppers. This is where it had come across the road and out of a pile that was right across the road and into this hopper that was over by the plant.
Okay.
This was the Madigan drag line that we talked about that did a lot of the operations on the west side and digging the gravel above ground. This is another machine that was probably stripping or digging gravel. This, of course, became the main source of aggregate because that's where it was all stored and went out by truck. Here, evidently, the picture was taken at a time when we were doing stockpiling, because that's a stockpiling truck. It's not a owner's gravel truck or anything like that.
Yeah, that's
stockpiling.
It's an off-road truck, isn't it? Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. These are pictures in the plant area where the material had been brought in, because you got to remember, when we were in operations, we were also bringing stuff from what we called the north end, which was the material from north of railroad.
Oh, okay.
So this here was an area where we brought gravel trains up from the north, what we call the north pit.
Okay.
And again, the gravel cars.
That north pit, Duane, is that what's in operation today?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes,
it's still operating.
yeah,
All right.
I'm still getting material out of there. I don't, basically, I'm not sure. I would think it was probably road gravel.
Okay. Okay.
But they don't have a process there where they're separating the stone and the sand. They're combining to make a road gravel product.
Gravel, okay.
Probably 20A or something.
Uh-huh. All right.
So that's pretty much in this picture what we have and what I know about.
Okay, well, let's swing back behind you there, Duane. There's another board of pictures there.
Okay, that first picture is just the office there, and we did have a accident prevention program. So that sign says how many lost days we had because of accidents. This is one of the old timers. This is part of the office staff. This is a good picture because it shows where I told you earlier about a conveyor coming out from those silos, and that's where we stored the sand.
Okay.
And that sand went into cement products and asphalt products. This is just a pump house where we got water for whatever, whether it was a plant or whether it was an operation over on the west side. Again, we have a picture of the silos, and a picture of the back end of the plant where the heavy media was that I talked about earlier. These are just pictures of the plant, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. The heavy media you talked about, what kind of a material was that?
Well, it was real black looking.
Okay.
But the good stuff sunk in it, and the soft stone and the stuff we didn't want on it came to the top, and we washed it
kind
off.
of floated off then.
Yeah, floated
Gotcha.
off.
Okay.
And even though we got that out of the good product, it sold because it could be used for certain things where it wasn't in cement and would be deleterious to that.
All right, great. Right behind you, Duane, we've got some jars
Oh, definitely.
that are marked with the different gradations.
Yeah, and that's important for us to see.
Let's get this out of your way, and you can go right over there and have a look at it.
Okay, I knew you had these. This is a stone which we called 10A, and it was the main stone for cement.
Okay, for ready mix, yeah.
For
All
ready
right.
mix. This is 21AA, which was a crushed stone along with the dust that was formed when it was crushed. And this became a good roadbed product. These this is a kind of a 25A, but which was used by the asphalt companies.
Okay.
This is 60/40 that the general person could use to mix it with a cement for a product. There's the pea gravel, and this is a product smaller than the pea gravel, and then the mason sand and the regular sand.
People might be a little bit confused on sands. You think, okay, sand is sand, but
sand is sand, except in the state of Michigan and probably most states, it became a product that was had a requirement.
right,
And
sharpness to it.
Yeah, it had so much on the 8 screen and so much on the 16, 30 on down to become a good concrete sand.
Okay.
But there was regulations that covered that by the state, and that all those piles of sand we had were that kind of sand.
Okay, great. Well, Duane, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming in today to give our viewers a good background on the gravel industry in Oxford. And in our next episode, we'll be looking at our second claim to fame, and that would be the Lone Ranger. And that's it for this week.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website dogsaver.org and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.